As promised, we are back to the personal surf journey, and in this vlog we look at the new expert turn session that is available to the public. What are the differences, how is the session structured, and how do we get on? You're about to find out. I'm James Davis, and I've been a skydiver for over 20 years, jumping and competing all around the world. In the last 18 months, I've been surfing at the wave pool in Bristol to see if wave pools can do for surfing what wind tunnels did for skydiving. I wanted to see what would happen if an average surfer trained at the wave pool for a year, if they could learn to get barreled, sharing all the mistakes, learning points and experiences along the way. What are the key differences and how do the wave settings compare to other sessions? With the Advanced Plus wave setting, you start with 4 T1 waves and then 8 to 9 T2 waves. In the expert turn session, there's no warm-up and it's straight into 6 T4 waves and 6 T3 waves. I think I've got that right, and it can be a little confusing, but I believe the T4 wave is actually slightly smaller than the T3 wave, but let us know in the comment section below if that's not right. Let's then think about the wave size and power. The first observation is that there feels to be a lot more water moving around in the expert turn session. If you look at when the set finishes and the surfer's trying to paddle back to the lineup, it would suggest that the currents are a lot stronger in the T4 and T3 wave settings compared to the Advanced Plus waves, where there really isn't much of a struggle. The pause between sets seems to be slightly longer in duration to compensate for these stronger currents. A second observation would be to look at the takeoff stage of the waves and compare them. It seems the wave reaches higher up the wall and that the shoulder of the T3, T4 waves are a lot steeper. If you look at the watermarks on the wall, where the colour markings are, then you can see the T4 and T3 waves are a lot closer to the top of the wall. If you look at the markers, you'll also see the watermark slightly earlier in the T4 and T3 wave settings compared to the Advanced Plus wave. And finally, if you look further down the wall, you'll see dampness right up to the top of the wall, whereas there is a dry layer on the T1, T2 waves of the Advanced Plus session. If we look at two pictures of where the waves initially break at takeoff, you'll see the T4, T3 waves have a wider whitewater section. More of the wave has broken, which kind of makes sense if you have a bigger swell hitting the same depth water. A quick caveat to these observations is that I have no idea if the water level of the pool was constant between the two sessions. It can fluctuate, but I'm assuming that this isn't a factor to consider. Now let's look at the midsection of the wave, typically after a surfer has done a cutback. Visually, it seems that the wave face is a lot steeper next to where the surfer is, that it's larger, and there is more face to the wave as you move away from the pocket down the line. One personal observation is that for both the Advanced Plus and Expert wave settings, if you mistime your cutback and try and wait for the wave to pick you up again, then the wave will have enough power to just pass you by. This wasn't just a problem for myself, as I saw some other surfers in the session having a similar problem. If you compare this to the Advanced Plus session, then I think you'll definitely see more surfers being more cautious, and more on that in a minute. But how do we get on? I did screw up a few of the waves, 3 out of the 12, but overall I was super happy to survive and make most of the waves. The key takeaway was that it was nice to challenge myself to surf more powerful waves, but also that some of the things I need to work on can be done on the lower wave settings. Perhaps another vlog on this, but I did recently surf the intermediate wave setting, which was actually amazing. There were just so many waves and it has everything you need to work on the takeoff fundamentals. Back to the expert turn waves, and for some reason I found the second half of the session and the T3 waves easier to surf. I have no idea why, but it just felt like an easier takeoff, despite being further back and a bigger wave. How a surfer starts the wave seems to be a massive factor. I don't know about you, but if I start well, have a nice flow and a calm, then it's a totally different experience to chasing your tail for the rest of the wave. My approach to the takeoff and being 2 meters of the wall also stayed. We've discussed this a lot in other videos, but finding a spot where the wave has enough angle to catch it, and then taking a bit of an angle in your trajectory seemed to work well for me. The downside of this approach is that the wave is breaking over a bigger area and the takeoff is blowing valuable real estate, so you end up with less wave to surf. This session wasn't full, but could I do 2 waves in a set? That's not for me this time. These waves really were at the apex of my capability, and the session required my full concentration, so getting around twice wasn't really an option. What was the standard of the other surfers in the session? Clearly it's a relative thing, but I would say really good. If you're thinking of surfing the setting, perhaps consider your reasons for choosing. I say this as when you look at the entire session, hardly anyone was able to take off by the wall, and in my humble opinion, the surfing was a lot more cautious. This surfer was doing a good job at zooming around, but most people in the session seemed to be concentrating on catching the waves and getting some basic turns in, just like me. Quick shout out to Carl, because there were very few people getting around for a second wave, and most people were only doing one despite the session not being full. The reason I say perhaps consider your reasons for selecting the session is that, as ever, there are loads of other sessions to pick from when you visit the wave. For all of you that have been following the channel, I've recently been kind of obsessed with the takeoff and even decided to do an intermediate session, as the number of waves the session provides is amazing. Being able to work on the takeoff basics in a low power situation also seemed super beneficial. The intermediate session was amazing, but clearly it's nice to be able to surf the expert turn setting and see what the waves were like. Rumour has it there's another setting above the T4 and T3 waves, but that's not available to the public right now, and it's only been staff who've surfed it to date. In the next episode, we start to focus on the backhand and working towards being able to surf the barrel. And if we can, perhaps we might fit some surfing in from the sea too. And that would be an interesting thing to see. And before I forget, there are just a few more days left for the gift promo code for the Hody TV platform that I talked about in the last video. Thanks to everyone for their feedback and input. It's been super helpful to have you guys review it. Until the next vlog, everyone. See you then.